Welcome to the Beeson Podcast, coming to you from Beeson Divinity School on the campus of Samford University. Now your host, Doug Sweeney.
Welcome to the Beeson Podcast. I'm your host, Doug Sweeney, and I'm joined today by one of my favorite Beeson students, Levi Bailey, who's getting ready to graduate this spring with his MDiv, Master of Divinity degree. We want to ask Levi about his time here at Beeson and find out where God might be taking him next. So thank you, my friend, for being with us.
Of course, Dean. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, we want everybody to get to know you, so introduce us. How did you come to faith in Christ? How did you decide the Lord was leading you into ministry? How did you get all the way to Beeson Divinity School?
Yeah, I think my answer is a little bit similar, pretty similar to a lot of Beeson students. I was born into a believing family, and one of the specific ways that my family practiced the Christian faith was we were really involved in service at a really young age. So nice. Even from a really young age, one thing I knew about Christianity is that Christians are people who serve with their hands, along with their hearts and their mouths. And so I'm really grateful to my parents for their example in that way. I remember even just being a little boy. One of my earliest memories, actually, is holding my dad's hand as we walked through the frigid Columbus winter in a downtown area where people needed groceries. And so he kind of led the example for me in that way. And that's one of my earliest memories. So really grateful to my parents. I'm still pretty tight with my family. I'm grateful to say that because I don't think, a lot of people can't say that.
Right.
But as far as my relationship with God, I just had God's presence was just such an abiding reality for as long as I can remember. There was never a time where I really felt like it clicked for me. It was always sort of there. And I remember, even you have written about this in your own life story. I think we have that in common. But it was just like always there. I can remember periods of my life, like even in 5th grade, where I could not wait to come home from school. I was racing home from school. Of course, I didn't drive, but I couldn't wait to come home from school just to read my Bible. And I say that not as a statement about myself, but really a statement about God's generosity, giving me that gift, giving me that hunger for himself.
Yeah.
And so this close intimacy that I felt with God sort of waxed and waned a little bit as I grew up. In my high school years was a particular period where I felt a little bit further from God than closer. But it was the summer after my high school graduation in 2017 that God sort of flipped the switch back on again. He made himself known to me in a new and a fresh way. I'm hesitant to call this the time of my salvation moment. I don't think I can identify a specific moment, but it was definitely a moment of spiritual renewal. And this was a moment where God sort of infused in me all kinds of interests for things that I was never interested in before. One of them primarily was a love for reading. I was always a good student in high school, but I didn't do my work as unto the Lord. I just kind of did it to get by. Yeah. And of all the books that were required reading in high school, only one of them was finished in total, and that was Frankenstein. Oh. Not a large book. Yeah. So it was pretty small. So that's like that's my only time I really obeyed the reading assignment. Okay. But when God sort of gave me that spiritual renewal in 2017, I just kind of gobbled up books. I started reading insatiably, kind of kept reading about.
How did you decide what to read at that point?
Well, I think a lot of young men go through this phase when they get saved where they think that apologetics is sort of the height of spiritual maturity. And I'm really grateful for all the apologetics that I've learned and all the apologists that have taught me, even if it's over books and podcasts and things. So a lot of that stuff. And then as the years went on, I started reading more kind of explicitly theological books about the Bible itself.
And your parents were making you aware of these books, or somebody at church or school, or
not
how did
really.
You know what book to read next? Even if you knew, I'm into apologetics in this season of my life, how did you know what books to read?
Well, a lot of these books were kind of just, I fell in love with videos, certain YouTube presences. And so that's kind of how I discovered, these people write books too. Yeah. And so I had friends. I was involved with Crew at Ohio University. And so I had people there who could kind of guide me along. Maybe you should read this next or this next. So I had some good help along the way.
Okay.
But it was a real hunger. And I'm still sorting out exactly where I'm headed vocationally and regarding ministry, but I can't help but think that God's kind of gift to me during that summer when he gave me new loves is going to be in some way related to what I end up doing, Lord willing. Yeah. So I'm still trying to figure out if that's going to take the form of teaching, preaching, maybe. I'd love to be involved in both in some way.
Well, shoot, you're doing a fair bit of this already. So
that's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
It's not so much someday.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I grew up in a non-academic family. There's probably only one person on both sides of my extended families that really did graduate and PhD work in a history-related field. So I didn't really know that you could study theology in an academic way. And when I heard that one of my friends had just come from this place called Moody Bible Institute, I was like, well, I didn't know you could really study the Bible like that. And she showed me her class schedule. I was practically salivating. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is exactly the kind of thing that I'm into on my own. And if I could be taught in person somewhere else, that'd be great. So, you can only make sense of your life in retrospect. And I understand that as a clear indication of the Lord's leading. Brought me to Moody, and before I knew it, I was enrolled at Beeson. I never heard of Beeson until like my last semester at Moody, and now I'm here, and it's truly been a wonderful, wonderful time. It's just been such a profound stage of growth in my life.
So was Moody in the sort of like on the radar screen of your family, your church friends? I mean, how'd you figure out you could go to Bible college? It was just a friend who showed that. That was all it was.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, my parents are great Christians, but they just didn't. I don't know if they knew about this kind of thing either. Sure. We were all kind of in the same boat. I don't think they knew.
Well, most people don't.
Yeah. So, they didn't know you could do that kind of thing. So I like to say, kind of tongue in cheek, that I sort of discovered it by accident. It's just you're just my friend. I was like, no way. What if I gave that a try? So
and you mentioned Ohio University. That was a surprise to me. I've gotten to know you pretty well, but I didn't know. So did you go there? What was the connection there?
Yeah, I think the best thing about my time it was a branch campus of Ohio University in Lancaster, Ohio. This is where I'm from, and this was kind of a time where I'm just kind of wandering aimlessly, academically speaking. Like I'm just doing some gen eds, not really knowing where I'm heading. And It wasn't until that friend came back from Moody and says, she's doing her thing. I'm like, no way. That kind of gave me some direction. And I'm so grateful for the Lord using her in my life.
Sure.
Yeah.
Did you like big city Chicago living?
Oh, yeah.
That would have been a little new, right? You didn't grow up in a big city.
That's right. That was real new. And it was a great 4-year period. I don't know if I would want to settle down in Chicago permanently, but it was an awesome time while I got to spend it there. Yeah, I miss it.
I think I remember how you first learned about Beeson, but I'm not positive, and it'd be nice to ask you for the sake of our listeners anyway.
Yeah.
You mentioned at the very end of your time at Moody.
That's right.
Was it a prof who told you? How'd you figure out that Beeson was a place that you should think about?
Yeah, there were a couple of really respected professors that we all loved at Moody who said that if they were going to do it over again, if they were graduating from undergrad, Beeson is the place they would go, and they would encourage a lot of their students to come here. So these are professors that were really influential in my life. But I think the one event where I kind of learned about it in more detail was through Emily Knight. She was
there for a visit.
She went up for a visit. Yeah, she had a little Beeson table, and we called it a seminary fair.
Yeah.
You got to just walk through the different tables, see what every seminary was offering, and she left a real good impression on me and a couple of buddies there that day. And we're like, man, it would be cool if we could go and study there. And so we're just so grateful that it happened that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
So were you walking around with Vadim at the time?
I was.
I know he was a buddy, and he still is. And you guys
came
at about the same time.
That's right. It was me and him. We were walking through, and we both had the same impression about Beeson. We're like, yeah, that was our clear favorite, you know.
Nice.
So, yeah.
All right. So you get to Beeson. You have to tell the truth. So the dean of the divinity school does a podcast in part to let people know what the Lord's doing at Beeson. So we all know I'm kind of promoting Beeson here. But you have to tell the truth in response to the questions I ask, because someday you're going to be answerable for this. So
come on.
Be completely honest.
Yeah.
What was Beeson like when you got here? Was it like what you thought it'd be? Did it surprise you in any ways at the beginning?
Yeah, it's a big step to move to a state you've never been to and to jump in a completely new community where there's no familiar faces. And I think my story is kind of exceptional in a way in that God was very kind to send me and my wife down with two other friends that we were already friends with at Moody. So we already had a little small community, and we lived right across from each other in the breezeway, which meant all four of us got to hang out nearly every night. And so it was a real blessing, It kind of prevented any sense of loneliness. If we didn't have anybody else, we had each other. But the truth is, we did have others too. I mean, we quickly made friends with other people here at Beeson. We found a church pretty quick too. Great leadership that we still go to. So it was a little bit challenge too. It was a bit of a challenge in that we had to count the cost, but it was one of those things that it just felt obvious that this is where I was supposed to be.
Right.
So,
any favorite classes, any favorite profs, anything like that you think, 10 years from now when I'm off doing my next thing, I'm going to have fond memories of that stuff.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I could list a ton, but I think the two that I keep telling newer students that I befriend here at Beeson is Dr. Thielman's New Testament theology. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of a big run through the New Testament, and this is a class that I really felt I got my money's worth in the sense that when we were done with the class and I was asked to teach a similar class, if I was at church or a classroom setting, I felt really equipped to be able to do that. Yeah. One thing that many students might not know about Dr. Thielman is that he has just real warm and gentle presence, but he asks a lot from you academically. And I really appreciate that about him.
In a very sweet way.
Yes.
He works you.
Yes. So I just enjoyed every part of that class. That's probably my number one. The second one that's also really impactful was Dr. Linebaugh teaches one of our 4 history and doctrine classes, and that was kind of the class on the Reformation.
Yeah.
And so that was huge. Just being introduced to a lot of aspects of Martin Luther's life and his theology that every Protestant can own. That doesn't have to be only for the Lutherans. Luther is a man for all Protestants. And so there's a lot that I learned there that has personally impacted me. So I'm grateful for his very clear teaching about what the gospel is, what the gospel is not.
Let me ask you another question about that. So I'm always trying to imagine the people who are going to listen to these recordings down the road. And I think I've got a pretty good feel for who listens. And I know some of them, it may just be automatic. If you said this Bible class with Dr. Thielman was big, they would get that in a heartbeat, right? Because the Bible is really, really important to the Christian faith and in Christian ministry. And of course, it should be a big deal for you in seminary. Yeah. But there are fewer people for whom classes in history and doctrine, historical theology, they think automatically that's going to be really important to you. But of course, as we know at Beeson, our history and doctrine sequence is a pretty special thing that lots of students like. How did it become a big deal to you? It's not just getting the Bible again, but obviously it's another way of learning about what's in the Bible. For Levi Bailey, how was that class and maybe other classes in the whole history and doctrine sequence that everybody's required to take, just important to you? What difference did it make for you?
Well, it comes down to this line that we confess in a lot of our creeds, namely the Nicene and Apostles' Creed, that we have one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. There is one Church of Jesus Christ which spans all time since the coming of Christ. And so maybe we have this inclination to think that those who existed, those who live, Christians who honored the Lord in the 1st century or even the 16th century are just they're relegated to the pages of history. They're not really for us. But the same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead is the same Spirit that lived within them. And I think it's really narrow-minded to leave them on our library shelves and to not consider the ways that they've thought deeply about the gospel. And so, when I was introduced to those classes about Martin Luther and his personal biography and his transformation, he just really helps you to understand what the Bible teaches in a clear way. Of course, like a class like Dr. Thielman's is great too, But you have all these other Dr. Thielmans, if you will, all throughout history who are constantly teaching you how to apply the gospel, how to think about it correctly within their own historical context. And that's really important. I mean, if we really believe what we confess, that we have one church, that there is one Holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, I think it would be a mistake for us to ignore their testimony.
Yeah.
So that's always been important to me, trying to get it right, trying to understand a little bit more.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so Levi, one of the things I really like about you, there are many, but one of the things I really like about you is that you're both simultaneously, you're both an excellent student and somebody who's just sort of practicing ministry regularly, loving on people regularly. Before we started recording, you talked about you're going to go preach at a mission on Monday night. I think you've told me recently you're doing an SMP now. Is that right, or did you just finish it? You're in the throes right now.
Yes, sir.
All right, so the question is this. At Beeson Divinity School, how do those things go together? I mean, a lot of people think divinity school, that's the academic study of the things of God.
Yeah.
Is it good for me spiritually? Is it good for my ministry development? How would you, if you had to kind of stand back a few steps and describe for people who've never been to seminary and never been to a seminary like this one, how the sort of practical, spiritual dimension of the divinity school and the academic dimension go together? How does that work for you?
Yeah, well, I don't want to hold myself up as the perfect example of this, but I can just be honest and say that the times where the things I learn in the classroom becomes the most real for me have been the times where I'm actually applying it and trying to help others with it. So it's been the times where I'm out doing, street evangelism, for example, that the gospel just sinks a little deeper into your bones, and it just begins to form you a little more deeply. And so I want to avoid the impression that the purpose of divinity school is just to fill up the mind. You got to kind of empty it out along the way.
Yeah.
And so again, I'm not perfect at this. I probably could have served in better ways and more often my time here. But I will say that if anybody is aspiring to be a seminary student, it's great to have both of those involved.
Yeah. And tell us, I used the acronym SMP a minute ago for Student Ministry Practicum.
Yeah.
For people who don't know what that is and are maybe thinking about seminary, tell them what the Student Ministry Practicum is at Beeson and what it's been like for you.
Yeah, the SMP is basically an opportunity for us to work together with, most often, another church in the area. One of the churches that we go to, sometimes not, but most often the church that we attend and worship at. And it's just an opportunity to kind of practice, just to get thrown in the ring of what pastoral ministry is like for a year. So it covers 2 semesters. And I was blessed to be able to do my SMP at the church that I attend, Christ Fellowship Church, just down the road. And so this is just a year-long opportunity for you to be involved in the life of the church. It's things like attend elders meetings, try to help out in the flow of the service. Maybe you'll get to preach at the church, helping out with very mundane things, setting up chairs. I've set up a lot of chairs this past year, and it's been a joy. Helping out with kids ministry. And so it's just an opportunity for you to serve Christ's body in a way that is a little bit more involved than your average lay person, I think. Just preparing you for the work of ministry, the kind of thing that we're preparing to do here.
Yeah. All right, I mentioned at the top of the show that you're about to graduate.
That's right.
You've got, are you counting the weeks? What is it? Several weeks, but only several left in your Beeson career. How's that feeling for you? I'm about to ask, how can our listeners be praying for you in days ahead?
Sure.
But this might set them up well for the next one. What's going on? Are you anxious? Are you praying your way through what God has next for you? What are your feelings like about being almost done?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the times where I was at a kind of impasse in the past and all the ways that God has just so providentially and surprisingly given me the next step. So I guess me and my wife are right now at a little bit of a confusing spot where it's just like we don't know for sure what's next. There's a little bit of a question mark that hangs over our future.
And is that because you've long thought, maybe God wants me to be a pastor, maybe God wants me to be a a teacher, academic of some kind, and it's hard to figure out what to do next?
That's a couple of the dynamics that are going on, but we have other ones too. Like for close to 7 years now, both my wife and I have lived away from our parents, far ways, and so there's 9 hours away from my family in one direction, 9 hours away from her family in another direction. So there's that, especially if we're going to start a family soon. That throws a whole other consideration into the table.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of factors that we're trying to consider, and we're trying to be prayerful about where the Lord would have me. So yeah, that plays into some of it. I'm really just looking for opportunities. Yeah.
All right. So how should we be praying for Levi Bailey as he gets ready to graduate?
Yeah, it's probably just what we were talking about the future and just next steps, things like that. So, we're not crippled with anxiety or anything like that, but it's a little bit of discomfort, as you can probably imagine. So we're just trying to think about what the next steps are and trying our best to follow God's leading.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, it's exciting, and it's amazing the ways in which God uses even things that create discomfort in our lives to grow us up into maturity for His glory, to further our ministries. So
that's right.
It's exciting for me to get to watch this happen. All right, friends, this has been Levi Bailey. He is one of Beeson's best and brightest. He's about to graduate here in less than 2 months, or about 2 months from now. Please pray for him as he tries to discern what the Lord has next for him. Thank you for tuning in. As always, we want you to know we're praying for you. We love you, and we say goodbye for now.
You've been listening to the Beeson Podcast, coming to you from the campus of Samford University. Our theme music is by Advent Birmingham. Our announcer is Mark Janolette. Our engineer is Rob Willis. Our producer is Neil Embry. And our show host is Doug Sweeney. For more episodes and to subscribe, visit beesondivinity.com/podcast. You can also find the Beeson Podcast on iTunes, YouTube, and Spotify.